The Siberian tiger, vast and unforgiving, a cold, sprawling expanse of dense forest, treacherous bogs and winding rivers. It is a land of stark beauty and hidden dangers. Deep in the heart of this wilderness lived a solitary lesnik named Ivan. A hardened man of the forest, Ivan knew its secrets like the back of his hand. He scoffed at the tales whispered around campfires, legends of strange creatures and ancient spirits that haunted the woods. They were just stories, he thought, meant to scare children and foolish travelers. Or so he believed. One crisp autumn morning, Ivan received orders to patrol a remote section of the taiga. The air was filled with the scent of pine and the distant calls of birds. Ivan, a seasoned lesnik, was used to the solitude of the forest. But this assignment felt different. An area rarely visited, even by seasoned lesniki like himself. The dense forest was shrouded in mist, giving it an almost mystical appearance. It was a place where few dared to venture. The elders warned him against it. They spoke in hushed tones, their voices filled with a mix of fear and reverence. Their faces creased with worry as they spoke of ancient curses and restless spirits, tales of those who had ventured into the depths of the taiga and never returned. Ivan brushed aside their concerns. He had always been a man of logic and reason, dismissing such stories as mere superstitions. Superstitions, he thought, nothing more. He had faced the wild many times and had always come out unscathed. He gathered his supplies, checked his rifle, and set off into the wilderness. The weight of his gear was familiar, a comforting reminder of his many journeys. The sun cast long shadows through the trees as he ventured deeper into the unknown. Each step took him further from the familiar and closer to the heart of the taiga. The air grew colder, the silence more profound. The forest seemed to close in around him, the trees standing like silent sentinels. A sense of unease settled over him, but he pushed it aside. He reminded himself of his experience and the countless times he had navigated through the wilderness. He was a man of the forest, and fear had no place in his heart. Determined and resolute, he pressed on, trusting his instincts. The forest felt different here, alien. The trees seemed older, the shadows darker, and the silence more oppressive. Ivan couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The shadows lengthened as the sun began its descent. Ivan decided to make camp for the night. He gathered wood for a fire, his mind still troubled by the oppressive silence of the forest. As he worked, he thought he heard a faint sound, a whisper carried on the wind. He stopped and listened intently, but the sound was gone. He tried to dismiss it as a trick of his imagination, but a shiver ran down his spine. The forest was alive with unseen eyes. He could feel it. As the night deepened, the whispers returned, louder this time, closer. The whispers grew louder, morphing into guttural chants that seemed to vibrate in Ivan's bones. He could feel the ground trembling beneath him. He scrambled to his feet, his rifle at the ready. His eyes darted around the campsite, trying to pierce the darkness. Suddenly, the chanting stopped. The forest fell silent again, but it was a different kind of silence. It was a heavy, expectant silence, the kind that precedes a storm. The air crackled with tension. Then he saw them. Small, shadowy figures emerged from the trees at the edge of the firelight. The creatures moved closer, their eyes glowing like embers in the darkness. The air around them seemed to hum with an ancient, unspoken power, a force that Ivan could feel deep within his bones. They were short, barely reaching Ivan's waist, with skin like bark and hair like moss. Their movements were fluid and graceful, almost as if they were one with the forest itself. Their faces were ancient and wizened, their expressions unreadable. It was as if they held the wisdom of countless ages, secrets of the forest that no human could ever comprehend. They wore clothing made of leaves and animal hides, and they carried crude weapons of bone and stone. These were not mere tools, but symbols of their connection to the earth and its primal forces. Ivan raised his rifle, his finger trembling on the trigger. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing the fear and uncertainty that gripped him. He had never shot at anything like this before, but he knew he had to defend himself. The forest seemed to close in around him, the shadows deepening as if to swallow him whole. These were not men, they were something else entirely. Creatures of legend, beings that existed in the stories told around campfires, now standing before him in the flesh. As he took aim, one of the creatures stepped forward. Its movements were deliberate, almost ceremonial, as if it was about to perform some ancient rite. It raised its hand, and Ivan felt a surge of energy pass through him. The sensation was overwhelming, a mix of fear and awe that left him paralyzed. His rifle fell from his grasp, clattering uselessly to the ground. He realized then that he was in the presence of something far greater than himself, something that defied all logic and reason. The creature that had disarmed Ivan gestured towards the others. They parted slightly, revealing a scene that sent a fresh wave of terror through Ivan's veins. Behind them stood a shimmering portal, a tear in the fabric of reality. It pulsed with an otherworldly light, beckoning him closer. He could see glimpses of another world beyond the portal, a world of impossible landscapes and strange, luminous flora. The air shimmered with unseen energies, and the very laws of physics seemed to bend and warp. Ivan understood then that these creatures were not of this world. They were guardians, protectors of this sacred gateway, and he had stumbled upon their secret, a secret they had guarded for centuries. Suddenly, a sharp crack broke the silence. One of the smaller creatures, hidden in the shadows, had fired a tiny arrow that whistled past Ivan's ear. The message was clear. He was not welcome here. His presence was a threat to their ancient order. The paralysis that had gripped him vanished. Adrenaline surged through his veins, overriding his fear. He had to escape, to get back to his world and warn others of this place. He turned and ran, his legs pumping furiously. He could hear the creatures in pursuit, their guttural cries echoing through the trees. He didn't dare look back. He just ran. Ivan burst from the tree line, gasping for breath, his clothes torn and his face streaked with sweat. His heart pounded in his chest as he tried to make sense of what he had just witnessed. The forest had always been a place of mystery, but today it had revealed its darkest secrets. He had stumbled back to the familiar path that led to his village, each step feeling heavier than the last. The trees seemed to whisper around him, as if sharing his fear and urgency. He didn't stop running until he reached the first cluster of houses. The sight of the village brought a fleeting sense of relief, but he knew his ordeal was far from over. He pounded on the door of the eldest villager, a woman named Baba Yaga, who was said to have knowledge of ancient magic and forgotten lore. His fists hit the wood with a desperate rhythm, echoing his frantic heartbeat. She opened the door, her eyes widening at the sight of Ivan's disheveled state. Her expression shifted from surprise to concern as she took in his appearance. He stumbled inside, his words tumbling over each other as he recounted his tale. His voice was shaky, filled with the terror of what he had seen. Baba Yaga listened patiently, her face grave. She had heard many stories in her time, but Ivan's tale seemed to carry a weight of truth that was hard to ignore. When he was finished, she nodded slowly. Her eyes seemed to pierce through him, understanding the gravity of his words. "You have seen the protectors," she said, her voice low and steady. "They are the guardians of the ancient ways, the keepers of the old magic. They guard the gateway to the spirit world, a place where mortals are forbidden to tread. To encounter them is a rare and dangerous event, one that changes the course of destiny." News of Ivan's encounter spread through the village like wildfire. The elders, who had once dismissed his skepticism, now looked at him with a mixture of awe and fear. They gathered around him, eager to hear his tale firsthand. Ivan recounted his story again and again, each time reliving the terror of that night. He described the creatures, the portal, the feeling of utter helplessness he had felt in their presence. He knew that he had been changed by his experience. He was no longer the same skeptical, hardened Lesnik. When he was finished, the elders fell silent. They knew that Ivan spoke the truth. The legends were real, and the forest held secrets that were best left undisturbed.